This is the Cypher System Rulebook, a setting-neutral system to play your tabletop RPG in, and it was sent to me by the creators themselves, Monte Cook Games, a while back, but I haven't opened it until yesterday morning, and I've been reading it, and I can say that I was absolutely amazed by the fact that I was able to get a grasp of the system and actually feel confident in running it in about an hour time. It is incredibly simplistic in its design, and at the same time it is deep enough so that power players and meta gamers and power builders can also find their fun with it. But what intrigues me the most about it is that it suits my playing style as a game master perfectly, which is theater of the mind and improvisation. Hi there fellow role players and game masters, my name is Mr. Taras and this is your go-to YouTube channel for everything tabletop RPG. So I want to go over the basics, why I love the things that they decided to do with this system and why it fits my playing style perfectly and why it might fit your playing style, and also the open-endedness of it. You can play sci-fi in this, you can play pure fantasy in this, steampunk, you can go superhero, you could just go modern day life superheroes kind of stuff. All that stuff you can run using the Cypher system, which has been something that I've always had trouble with in 5th edition. Another thing I want to say is when I'm playing 5th edition, I'm playing fantasy, and even if it's like some kind of science fantasy thing, when I want to introduce something of my own, let's say there is a nautical campaign and suddenly a ship pops out of the smoke and they have this weapon that's more like a rocket. It's a modern weapon, they invented it, it's the only thing. It's really hard for a game master to come up with like the right stuff, to use the right numbers and right words to use that in 5th edition. You really need to think about like, how am I going to take this and put that into a 5th edition, because it is more built for fantasy, it's more built for some science fantasy, and for me it's always been hard to introduce like new stuff to it. But with the Cypher system, it is all just super easy, barely an inconvenience. So let's talk about the basics. And again, this is not meant as a full tutorial video. This is just to give you a broad idea of what the system is trying to do. And there are a few major differences with 5th edition. And yes, I'm going to talk about 5th edition and compare a lot to 5th edition, because that is the system that I am the most familiar with. And I feel most of my viewers are at least familiar with the 5th edition because I've been talking about it for years. Now, the main difference is something that the first time I read it, I was like, I don't know. But the more I read into it and the more I watch actual plays of people doing it, I'm actually loving it to death. And that is the game master never rolls a single die. Now, you can sit around and roll dice if you want at your table, but you're not meant to roll dice with the Cypher system. The Dungeon Master is only there to tell the story, like in 5th edition, to come up with the difficulty class, say the difficulty class of a check that the player makes, like in 5th edition, but it is never the Dungeon Master that makes the check. The player always rolls, and by that I mean if the player is doing an action, let's say they're doing something like climbing a wall, or they're trying to throw a baseball over a home plate, or they're hitting somebody, or they're hitting a baseball, they have to roll for that, right? And they can roll for that, and the Dungeon Master sets the difficulty, and they just set the difficulty between 1 and 10. Now, players are rolling a d20, so we need a number on the d20 for the player to roll. All that you have to do is take the number, the difficulty of the roll, say it is a 5, right? I, as a Dungeon Master, say, yeah, you're throwing a baseball over home plate, but you're just trying to do it in a chill way. It's not meant to go fast or precise, just throw the baseball. That's difficulty 5, right? So you multiply that by 3. That's all you need to do. You multiply that by 3, and that is the number the player needs to hit in order to succeed. That's it. Now, the player almost never, there's like a few exceptions, but let's say they never add anything to their G20. And now I hear you thinking, now where's the power play and how can I build my character and can I make sure that my character is better at something if I don't get any modifiers. Well, the modifiers work the other way around. It is up to the player to use their skills, their points, whatever is on their character sheet, like in 5th edition, to not add points to their roll, but deduct points from the difficulty of the roll. It's just the other way around, but it actually makes things really, really easy. For example, I'm just naming something. Somebody has to jump over a spiked pit. That's always one of my examples. They have to jump over a spiked pit, and the pit is somewhat, it's a broad pit, right? You can jump over it, but you really need a running start. So the dungeon master is like, the game master is like, I'm gonna set that at 6, right? So that's already a roll of 18 or more that you need to roll on your d20. Which is doable, but there is a big chance you're going to fail, so the player is going to want to make that roll easier for them, so they can say, yeah, but I'm trained in athletics. Oh, and Dungeon Master goes, right, then it's not a difficulty 6 anymore, it is a difficulty 5, because you have athletics, which eases the roll. It doesn't ease the 18, it eases the difficulty that you have to multiply by 3. So you take the difficulty of 6, and the player's like, I'm trained in athletics. All right, then it is a 5. So the roll now, 5 times 3, is 15, which is really good. But then another player is like, I do this, or I cast this, or hey, I have boots of jumping over a spike pit, right? Which eases the roll one more. Which it says in the magic item. In the item it says is that it eases rolls to jump over spike pits. Just an example, right? Okay, then the difficulty class was a 6, but with the athletics it became a 5, and now it is a 4 because you have these special boots, right? And then at a 4 times 3 is now a 12. Now the player only needs to roll a 12 in order to hit. Chances have increased by a lot, right? Now, I hear you thinking, wait, if there's a difficulty between 0, which is an automatic success, and 10, then everything 7 and up is technically impossible. And yes, everything 7 and up is technically, by normal human standards, impossible. The D20 in the Cypher system, the D20 represents the normal, that's the way I interpret it, the normal human being and what they're capable of. If anything is 7 difficulty, a normal human being will not be able to do it without any interference, any help, any item that helps them, or whatever. So setting that difficulty can be done. So the Dungeon Master might be like, yeah, that's nearly impossible. Let's just set it at, I don't know, let's just set it at 8, right? Which is 8, 16, 24. Now the player needs to roll at 24. So the player is, okay, so now I need to do stuff in order to bring that below 20 and I hope even lower than 20. So I need to bring that 8 down to like say 5 in order to even have a chance to do that, or maybe even to a 3 or a 4 depending on what the players and the group can do in order to bring that difficulty class down. For example, like you can put effort, which costs you points. It is a resource, and you can put extra efforts in a thing you're doing. Let's say you're trying to hit a Hydra, but hitting the Hydra at this point, it is a 24 to hit, so a difficulty 8, which is impossible. It's impossible to hit. But a player can spend effort points in order to bring the difficulty of a roll down. So if they spend 1 effort point, they can bring down the difficulty by 1. If they spend 2 effort points, by 2. So they can go all out on that and even bring it down. Sometimes players will be able to bring impossible tasks down to just automatic successes. And that is why I love this Cypher system. You deduct from the difficulty with your skills. It's just a really fresh wind for me to play it that way. I absolutely loved it. The first time I read it was like, I don't get to roll any dice as a game master, which is really weird. But then I was like, yeah, I can set the difficulty and I can tell the difficulty to the players, but that's because that's what the Cypher system, it is that way. Like most people play it that way. You tell the difficulty, like, give me a roll of 6. which is an 18, and they're like, oh, it's a 6, oh, can bring it down to 5, I can bring it down to 4, so they know it is a 6, and they're trying to bring it down, which is really, really cool to my opinion.
But hey, Mr. Tarask, what if a creature is trying to hit a player character? Does a Dungeon Master, Game Master, also not roll?
You're absolutely correct, Internet Troll. If a Game Master is trying to hit a player with, say, a creature with a melee attack or a crossbow or a freaking blaster, whatever genre you're playing, the creature does not roll an attack roll like in 5th edition, but the player rolls a defense roll. And it is again the level of the creature that depends the difficulty of the roll. If the level of the creature is 4, then the defense roll is a 12, and it is up to the player again to use their skills or their items like a shield or whatever to bring down that roll. For example, a shield eases every roll by 1. So a difficulty 4 roll, a defense roll, becomes a difficulty 3 defense roll. And now you get to defend yourself with a 9. You've already heard me use the word ease, which is something you need to remember, and it's one of the only things you need to remember. If you encounter that word, all it means is you bring down the difficulty of a check, of a roll, by 1. So before you multiply it by 3, so the eventual roll will be eased with 3 points. So if you have boots of jumping over spike pits, and which say this eases jumps over spike pits, the jump over the spike pit will ease with 1 point before you multiply it by 3. There's also the exact opposite, which they call hinder. Let's say the boots of jumping over a spike pit ease the roll for jumping over spike pits, but hinder the roll for jumping over non-spike pits. That doesn't make any sense, but you get the idea. It hinders. So instead of it being a 6, which the Game Master says it is a 6, it now becomes a 7. Hindering adds a level of difficulty. Easing, what's the word? Eases the level of difficulty. So before we get into action economy and speed in this game, which I personally think are its main strengths, I want to talk about special rolls real quickly. If you're trying to do a task with your d20 and you're subtracting from the task and you're doing all kinds of stuff to make that task happen, you can also roll a natural 17, a natural 18, or a natural 20 on your roll. Yes, as opposed to 5th edition, where only something cool happens at a 20 and something shitty happens at a 1. Now something cool happens at a 20, something shitty happens at a 1, something cool happens at a 17, and something just a little bit cooler, 17, 18, and a 19, and a 20. Okay, yeah, I'm rambling. So at a 1, there is a GM intrusion, which makes a free intrusion, which is a system where the GM can do something to like interrupt the game, so you have an extra obstacle to get over as a player, which can be all kinds of things. Maybe you try a running start towards a pit, but you roll a natural 1. Your dungeon master decides that your shoelaces weren't tight, and you just fall flat to the floor. You don't fall into the spike pits or anything, because then you're going to make Game Master is just a piece of shit. But you fall to the ground and you break your nose, and you take falling damage before you can attempt again, right? So the 17, rolling a natural 17 gives you 1 additional point of damage. If you roll a 17 on a roll against a creature that you're trying to dish damage to, you do another 1 point of damage. 1 point is worth way more in Cypher System than it is in 5th edition. 18 gives you also a damage bonus of 2 additional points of damage. A 19 gives you either 3 additional points of damage or a minor effect. And a minor effect is something really cool. It is actually at the Dungeon Master's discretion, but I see the book talk about it a lot, and I see a lot of actual plays also doing it, where they talk with the player towards what might happen. And the book explains like all kinds of examples of minor effects to resolve the task. If the roll was something other than the attack, the PC gets a minor effect in addition to the normal result of the task. So instead of jumping jumping over a pit, you make a 360 while jumping over a pit, and another person gets like an extra modifier to their roll, or the other person gets like, "Whoa, that's so cool! I'm gonna try that as well," and they're all hyped up, so it eases the roll for the second person. Something like that could be a minor effect. And the 20, if the roll was a damage dealing attack, the damage deals deals 4 additional points of damage, and you get a major effect in addition of the 4 points of damage, or in addition of whatever you're trying to do. And major effects are the same as minor effects, but they just have more of a major effect on the game. I think this is a really cool system because this adds again to the randomness of the game, because the world and the universe is random, and it's really cool that it happens more often than in 5th edition, but also the stuff that happens more often is more widely spread between different stuff happening. So before we go over the character sheet together to kind of explain what is what, I have to talk about speed and action economy in this game. Because for me, as you know, I am a fan of simplification, and this is where the system really shines and really feels like it is built to keep the game flowing, and it doesn't slow down. So like the player needs to roll 20 d12, and then there's difficulty classes and saving throws and all that crap piled together. With the this system, I have to talk about something called distance. The distance is the distance between you and, say, an enemy, right? In 5th edition, it's all about 25 feet, and this spell is 30 feet, and this spell is a cone 40 feet, and there's a line, all that stuff. They split it up into 3 major distances, right? The immediate distance is 5 to 10 feet. From you to the enemy is a immediate distance. This distance can be used to make melee attacks or range attacks with weapons that are able to make range attacks an immediate distance. Then there is the short distance, is anything greater than immediate distance but less than 50 feet. Also, thank you so much for adding meters into this book. At Monte Cook Games, 10 feet is 3 freaking meters. 50 feet is 15 freaking meters. That's so much better for me as a European person and like almost the entire world to figure out. Then there is very long, then there's long distance, anything greater than short distance but less than 100 feet. And there's very long distance, which is anything greater than long distance but less than 500 feet. And that's all you kind of need to know about distance. There is nothing else. It's just, are you in immediate distance, are you in short distance, or are you in long distance from somebody? Immediate distance, you don't need to use movement to attack somebody. Within 10 feet of you, you can attack somebody here, you can attack somebody there. All you need to do is like make a single jump, attack, make a single jump or whatever, run around a little bit within that 10 feet, which is really easy and makes theater of the mind much more easier for this system. Then the short distance is the distance greater than that immediate distance, but now you can still use your short distance to make your speed part of your action. Yes, you have an action, you can do an attack or whatever. If you're within short distance, you can use your speed as part of that action. If you are in a long distance, then you need to go choose if you want to do an action or you want to go run around towards a person. And this is where the absolute great action economy comes in. And something that I hate about 5th edition is when you hit like level 7 or level 8 or level 9, games tend to be so freaking long, and sometimes turns by players, especially power players, they drag on for so long that other players start falling asleep or they're texting their girlfriend or whatever, which drags the game. It doesn't help the game. With this, you get one action. One freaking action. You want to shoot the guy? Shoot the guy. You want to punch the guy? Punch the guy. You want to take a sip of a flask? Take a sip of a flask. You want to throw a potion at your friend? Throw a freaking potion at your friend. That's your action. You go as a game master, you go, what's your action? Action, boom, roll, boom, next person. What's your action? Action, roll, boom, roll. That speeds up the game so much, especially when you're like, the players are like, yeah, can I hit the guy? And you're like, yeah, you're within long distance, so you're gonna spend your action running towards him. Okay, boom, next guy, what's your action? That speeds up the game, that makes the game so much more fun, so much more exciting. To my opinion, I've not tried it yet. I will be trying it very soon, but I've seen a lot of actual plays already. I've been browsing through them, and just the combat and everything is way faster, way more exciting. I like it. So let's get over the character sheet for the Cypher system. Now, this is not a full guide on how to build a character. This is just going over what is what, and this is basically it. So I have to switch right here. So this is the character sheet. Well, this is the character sheet. This one page, flat page kind of thing is your character sheet, and then there's another page with like background and notes and a full-size portrait if you want. I poured myself, by the way, a fresh cup of coffee because I will probably need it. So the character sheet, this really shows the simplification of this system. Your character has a name, so let's fill in, I don't know, Juicy Jane. Juicy Jane is a blank who blanks. This makes your character. Your character has a descriptor, it has a type, and it has a focus. And then there is even flavor or other stuff you can add to it. So we start off with the type. I know the type is the second thing in the sentence, and we're trying to make a sentence. Juicy Jane is a descriptor type who whatever her focus is. So it makes sense. The type is basically your class. Now, don't take your class to mean something as restrictive as a class in the 5th edition. This is way less that way. It is more in an open way. So there's a few classes in this book. There is the warrior type, there is an adept type, there is a speaker type, there is an explorer. So your warriors are like your fighters. They could be really bulky fighters or really dexterous fighters. Your explorer is more like your ranger, your scavenger, your rogue, your thief kind of character. Adepts are people who can cast magic, or in other settings who are really like they can use technology to do all kinds of really weird stuff. Speakers are more like your social people, like the bards in 5th edition or in fantasy. So let's say a Juicy Jane is a warrior. So warrior, right? So we need to give that like word before it. So Juicy Jane is a blank warrior. So a blank warrior, this gives you your descriptor. And your descriptor, for me, feels kind of like your subclass, but also your background in one thing. But also, it is not restricted to your class. You can be a whatever class you want to be. So warrior kind of says like, oh, Juicy Jane is a bulky woman, which she doesn't need to be. Juicy Jane could have a descriptor, and descriptors are all kinds of stuff. So, brash, appealing, clumsy, chaotic, cruel, creative, craven, fast, exiled, empathic, doomed, dishonorable, guarded, just like a million, intelligent, inquisitive, intuitive, honorable. Let's say we're building something like the Purple Dragon Knight, right? We are making her charming. Now, suddenly, Juicy Jane is a charming warrior instead of like this bulky warrior type. She's a charming warrior. She is really good at fighting, but because she is charming, she also has extra stuff she can do. For example, she has +2 to her intelligence pool. I'm getting to that. She has a skill where she is trained in all tasks involving positive or pleasant social interaction. Trained means it eases every roll by 1. So a roll of difficulty 6 becomes a roll of difficulty 5, which means you only need to roll a 15 to succeed. There's other skills, there's contacts, and there's even inabilities. Yes, for example, any task involving lore, knowledge, or understanding is hindered. It's an inability, but you're not unable to do it. It's just hindered. It's more difficult for you. It just increases the difficulty by 1. So she is a charming warrior who also has like a contact she can contact every now and then, and we need to give her a focus. So with the focus, you can take a lot of stuff. So the foci in the book, which is plural for focus, is stuff like builds robots, battles robots, bears a halo of fire, blazes with radiance, emerges from the obelisk. Holy shit. Doesn't do much. Doesn't do much. Entertains, fuses flesh and steel, hauls at the moon. There's like really simple stuff in here, and there is really awesome stuff in here. Let's say she doesn't doesn't do much. So now our sentence is complete. Juicy Jane is a charming warrior who doesn't do much. She's charming, but she doesn't do much. She's like the type that really tells other people what to do. And that's basically it. That's the main idea of your character. Now, what these foci do is doesn't do much. Gives you, for example, life lessons. At tier 2, totally chill. At tier 3, skill with attacks or improvise. Tier 4, life lessons. All of that stuff. And they refer to the page in the book to where you can find those things to add to your character. But mostly it comes down to just adding a skill here. And as you can see, there isn't a set skill list on here like in 5th edition because it is open. It is open to any genre. If you want to play a baseball game, you can play a baseball game. If you want to play some kind of futuristic game, you can play a futuristic game of Star Wars or whatever. So you have to write your skill right here instead of flicking a few boxes. But then it says from what pool you fill in, from what pool it draws from, and then you can say I'm trained in it, I'm specialized it, or I have an inability in it. For example, if you're trained in it, it eases the difficulty by 1. If you're specialized in it, it eases the difficulty by 2. If you are enabled to do it, it increases the difficulty by 1. This can also happen. For example, you're trained in something, but a magic item might give you an inability of it, which means this cancels each other out, basically. If you flick this one, you only get like it eases the difficulty by 1, which is, so that's it. There's some math involved, right? Then there is tier, there is effort, and there is XP. So the tier is basically the character level. They call them tiers because there is a leveling system within the levels. Let's say we are a tier 1 character. I'm not going to fill in effort and XP. It's something that can be explained while you're playing by the Dungeon Master. And then you have 3 ability scores, not 6 like in 5th edition. You have 3 of them. You have your might. Let's say Juicy Jane has I don't know what the numbers exactly are. She has 5 might, she has 9 speed, and she has 10 intellect, right? This becomes the same, this becomes the same, and this becomes the same. It's that simple. Now, you might have noticed, that there is no hit points on this character sheet. Where the fuck are the hit points? Well, the hit points, I tell you, they're not there. There are no hit points. Your might, your speed, and your intellect are your hit points. And this makes so much more sense because with 5th edition, although they try to explain it in the books, basically you're always playing the game like, oh, somebody hits you in the shoulder. But normally, if somebody hits me in the shoulder with a broadsword, you will cut off my arm and I will probably bleed to death in a matter of seconds. With this, your hit points are more like you slowing down or you being tired, so your intelligence goes down. For example, when I'm an aggressive inline skater. I'm not aggressive. It's a sport, aggressive inline skating, where you do tricks on inline skates. When I do tricks, I do a lot of like cool tricks, but then I get tired and suddenly the tricks don't work anymore the way I want them to work. So that is why it draws from your might, your speed, and your intellect. You get tired, it can draw from your speed in a way that somebody like hits your leg and it kind of like trips you, or you have to jump aside, which makes you less speedy, like you get off balance. And fighting, like any kickboxer knows, and any boxer knows, and any karateka knows, right? Fighting is more a matter of balance than it is a matter of like getting punched or punching, right? It's really hard to explain, but that's basically it. There's also an edge you can have, and an edge is basically the points you can spend in order to put extra effort into your role. So let me explain. For example, you want to jump over a pit. A spiked pit again. I'm saying, yes, that is a difficulty 5 might roll. So what you need to do is roll a 15. If you do nothing with your skills or whatever, it's just a flat out 15. You don't add anything, you just roll 15. But you could spend this edge point in order to ease that No, that's sorry. The first one costs you 3, so that's basic math. The details. So you can spend these in order to ease the difficulty of that roll, to bring it down to say 12, to bring it down to say 9, to bring it down to say 6, whatever. So, and that's called effort. You can use that edge in order to give to put extra effort in attempting something like hitting or whatever, that kind of stuff. You put extra effort in it, and this is basically the pool you use in order to spend those. And the pool here is basically your health pool. So if I attack you with an attack that deals might damage, most attacks, by the way, most physical attacks, most attacks deal speed damage. So basically, the basic rule says it deals speed damage. So if I say I do 4 damage, which is a lot in this system, you're now at 5 speed, right? If your speed becomes 0, you can see right here, you become impaired, right? +1 effort per level. Ignore minor and major effect results on rolls and combat rolls. So you don't die if 1 becomes 0, but you gain a flaw for this, so you are now impaired, right? If you hit another one at 0, you come debilitated. You can't move only an immediate distance. You cannot move, and if speed pool is 0. So so like this, let's say I attack you on your might and you have 0, so you become impaired, and then your intelligence also becomes 0. You are unable to move even if your speed is 5, because your might is on 0, so you're like, oh my god, I'm so tired, and then your brain is just saying stop, don't move, whatever, right? If another one hits 0, you die and you're rolling a new character. Then we get to the skills section, which are the book is full with skills that might give you extra stuff, but the book also really cleverly states, like, you can come up with any skill as a game master, talking to your players with any skill that would make sense for your character, because it is an open-ended system. So, for example, I could have intimidation, which is only when I'm trying to lie, right? So when I'm trying to lie, when I'm trying to lie, I'm of course using intellect. So this is an intellect, and I'm trained in intimidation right now. I can also go, when I advance, I can specialize into something, or when somebody says, oh, you're now wearing the wrong clothes or whatever, and people are just laughing at you because you look like a clown, you get this, but you're still trained in it, so it kind of cancels each other out. So let's say it is, and there's a bunch of skills you can type in here that you can take from the book, but you can also work with your GM in order to get that. And now for the interesting part and the coolest part of the system for the player, it is the advancement, and this is really where the character building comes in. Your dungeon master can give you experience points. So I've put, like, let's say I've already given you 8 experience points. At any time in the game, you as a player, you can say, I do one of these things, in whatever order you want them to do. If you have done 4 of these, you go to the next tier. So you level up by 1, and you get all the benefits from that tier for your warrior, for your focus, and for your descriptor. So you're tier 1, and I give you a few experience points during the game. You're 2 experience points. You're like, oh, great, 2 experience points. And suddenly you get 4, and you decide to do one of these things, and you can increase a capability. Increase capabilities 4 points into your stat pool. So you can add whatever 4 points into whatever stats you want here. So this is where the player building comes in. You can go full out on intellect, but you can also say, like, oh, this becomes an 11 and I have 3 left. Let's give me 1 more speed and then 2 more might. So you become more balanced, but you can go completely into intellect and fuck might, right? But you can also do all of that stuff, and you can combine really more in like other systems in 5th edition, where you have more like your skill points in 3.5, or you had skill points depending on your intelligence. You could spend those points on your skills, which I always really liked. You can move towards perfection, +1 to the edge of your choice. So you can give 1 edge, which gives you more chances to use your effort, which you can use to lower your difficulty of rolls. Extra effort, you can put 1 in, +1 into effort. Oh, there's the effort thing. That's something I'm not explaining right now, but your your game master will know, no problem. Skill training, trained in a skill or specialized in a trained skill. Oh, boom, I was already trained in intimidation, right? So I can think this, hit this, and go specialized. Now it gives me a +2, which is not, it eases the difficulty of a roll by 2. Or something else you talk about with your game master, according to the book and the setting you play in, you can do all kinds of stuff in order to do something else. But if you do 4 of these, you move to the next tier. So this is really cool because you get to choose in what order you do it. So I am Juicy Jane is a charming warrior who doesn't do much, but she is really good at freaking lying, right? Now I get to do this really early in the game. 4 XP, bomb, it now becomes 0 because I've spent it. Skill training, I don't do much, but I can lie my ass off. And there's something else I need to say about XP, because for example for the warrior, oh by the way, yeah, for example for the warrior, they get special abilities. They can spend experience points to do a player interruption, player intrusion. For example, weapon break. They can break their enemy's weapon when they get attacked and they do that by spending 1 XP. So your XP point might be like this, and you have done this, so it becomes 4, and then you do a special thing, it becomes 3 again. So this is really cool. All the players and all the characters will level up at different moments, but also you can choose to stay in tier 1 for a very long time by just using your XP points to be really awesome at stuff. Or you can be like, no, I want to level up, I want to be at tier 2, I get this really cool thing, so I want to be tier 2. So you really focus on making these things happen. You save up your experience points all the way to 16, and they're like boom, 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 and boom, you level up to tier 2, and that's really cool. So the Cypher system has Cyphers, and Cyphers are basically, and this is what I like less about this setting, and I will use less in the way that it's presented in the book for my games. Cyphers are one-use abilities that are built to randomize your playing sessions so that they don't feel the same every time again. Now, one-use abilities can have 2 meanings. They can be physical items that are manifest ciphers, called manifest ciphers, just an item that can do one thing. If you activate it, suddenly you can walk through a wall or something like that. You have it in your inventory, and you can use it whenever you want. But also you can have subtle ciphers, which are not physical. These nobody really knows, depending on what setting you're playing, but nobody really knows where they come from. But I could give you a subtle cipher saying you get to walk through a wall, meaning that whenever you want, you can use that subtle cipher to walk through a wall once, or when it says for 24 hours, or when you're playing Numenera, a campaign setting built for the Cypher system, it's 28 hours because the day is 28 hours. You can do that, but then the cipher disappears, and you're getting all kinds of ciphers during the game. It's really built to get a lot of them, but you can only carry a few of them, which does 2 really cool things. First of all, you have a set of ciphers you can carry and use, but then you encounter a new cipher, but you're at your cipher limit, meaning that you have to either use one of your ciphers you already have, you have to either take one cipher you have and throw it out to put in that new one, or ignore the new one, or give the new one to one of your friends. You can carry more, but then you get like this sort of encumbered rules thing where you get like downsides towards carrying more ciphers. The reason I don't like it is the subtle ciphers. They just don't make sense. It just, in a storytelling way, at least for my settings, for my sci-fi, like my fantasy setting with a little bit of like science fantasy setting, it just doesn't make sense to really give a reason towards why somebody would suddenly be able to do something random. They know upfront what they will be able to do. They can choose when, and then it disappears and they're not able to do it anymore. Manifest ciphers are basically one-use magic items. That I can get behind. And that was the Cypher System Rulebook. I know it is kind of a lengthy video, but it was kind of me trying to explain the rules, the basics of the rules, so you can get ready to just sit down and play if your GM knows the rules pretty well. Now, it's also me giving my opinion on some of the stuff and me just talking about it to you. If you are looking for a new system, if you want to walk away from 5th edition for whatever reason is going on right now, you can look into the Cypher system. You can learn it by just watching this video. If your GM knows about it and knows pretty well what it's all about, you can start playing and just figure the rest out while playing, because that's the most fun thing to do, right? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to comment below, hit the thumbs up, and tell me if you have any questions about the Cypher system. Any question, make sure to drop it in the comments below, because I want to answer them. If I don't know, I can look it up for myself and we can learn together. Until next video, bye-bye.